What is good, everybody? In this video I'm going to be showing you everything that you need to start pattern making and sewing in 2025, especially if you're on a budget. So before I get into the video, let me introduce myself a little bit. My name is Malcolm Dakar. I have been pattern making and sewing for about 10 years, and I've gained a lot of knowledge throughout those years, and I've made everything from hats to bags to jackets to pants to shorts to skirts to dresses recently, and really everything in between. And so I feel like I am the right man for the job. I'm not going to steer you in the wrong direction, and we're going to have a lot of fun with this. So I do not want to waste anybody's time, so let's get right into it. I'm going to clip this like it's a nipple clamp. Hopefully this works out well. Okay, so let's get into everything that we would need for the pattern making process. The first thing being paper. And I really like to use this paper. This is called builder's paper. I get this from Home Depot. It's not that expensive and you get quite a bit of it. I mean, I believe I'm able to make, depending on how big the patterns are, at least, 50 plus patterns. I'm just guessing off the top of my head, but you do get a lot of it. It is really wide and it is very inexpensive, and it is much heavier than your regular paper, so you won't really have to worry about your patterns like ripping very easily, and so I really enjoy working with this. Now let's get into the rulers that I use for my pattern making. The first one being just a nice big old straight ruler. It does not need to be fancy. You can probably tell all the numbers have been wiped away, but the ruler still works well. The next one being is a curved ruler, and I use this to create the curve of my pants or skirts or whatever I need a slight curve to, and this comes in handy. The third one being my French curve ruler, and again, I'm gonna keep saying it, we're doing this on a budget. As you can tell, it's been used, there's a lot of tape on it, but again, it still works well, it still serves a purpose, and so I still use it. And the final ruler that I use is a soft tape measure. I like to use this to measure things out. If you're measuring something that does have a curve to it, obviously the straight ruler probably wouldn't really come in handy, and so I like to use this for those type of purposes. Next, we have our rotary cutter, and this is definitely just a preference. I know a lot of people like to use shears, which are these. I think the only reason I don't use shears are because these aren't sharp, and I do not have a sharp pair. And what I found when I started beginning pattern making, sewing, and everything, that my rotary cutter was just easier to handle than a pair of scissors. If you are going to use a rotary cutter, I would suggest you getting a cutting board. And I use a cutting board obviously because you don't want to cut up your table or what you're cutting underneath of, so you definitely would need a cutting board if you plan on using a rotary cutter. But if you don't plan on using a rotary cutter, I wouldn't really suggest getting a cutting board because I don't really think you need it. And I should say that if you are going to purchase a pair of shears, that you should have two pairs, one for cutting out the pattern and then one for the fabric, and you should never mix the two. Next, I just have other small pairs of scissors. These I use to trim the thread that I have, and I'd rather use these instead of like the bigger shears, because you might run the risk of cutting into your fabric by using the bigger shears. So definitely just have a smaller pair lying around. Again, these are probably like $2 or something at your local dollar store, but again, I like to use these to cut my threads. And I also like to drop them on the floor, potentially breaking them. I love that. Next, let's do water soluble pencil, and what this pretty much is just like a marking pencil. You use this to mark on your material. If you need to, whatever you need to mark, you would use this, and it washes out. It's not too harsh. It's not like a pencil where you might not be able to get it out. So I would say this isn't necessary, but does come in handy sometimes, and I do like to use it. Next being our tracing wheel, and this comes in handy when you are trying to trace something like within the pattern. And so you have your pattern, which is like a square, let's say, but something within the square you need to trace, and so this is where a tracing wheel would come in handy. So again, it might not necessarily be something that you need right off the bat, but if you have one lying around, definitely keep it next to you because you might need it. Maybe should have said this in the beginning of the video, but it goes without saying, for the pattern making process, you will need some pencils and an eraser. I would definitely suggest getting a good eraser because you will probably be erasing a lot unless you're just a whiz at pattern making and you don't need to erase anything. If so, shout out to you, but I definitely still need one. And they look like this for people who don't know, pencil and eraser. The next things that you will need, and these will probably, actually no, let me backtrack and say these will absolutely be your best friends. You and these tools will be like this, I promise you, and that is seam ripper. A seam ripper will become your best friend because I guarantee you, you will mess up quite a bit, quite often actually. You will mess up immediately upon venturing into this process. You will mess up and you will need a seam ripper. Next we have pins, and you would use these to pin in place your fabric. Another kind of inexpensive thing, you know, you can get a little case of them for, you know, maybe like $5 if not less. And so yeah, definitely grab some pins. And then we have clips. Again, not necessary, but if you are planning on making a lot of patterns, these definitely come in handy because you will need these to, you will need these to clip your patterns. You know, once you make your patterns, you're gonna have a lot of pieces, you know, a collar, a sleeve, a front, back, this, that, and the third. And so you'll need some clips to put all those together, just so you know things won't get jumbled, because it will get jumbled very quickly if you do plan on making a lot of patterns, and your head will start spinning and it will just be crazy, and you don't want that. Okay, next we have an iron. Ironing, pressing is very, very important in the sewing process. And so again, another thing that a lot of us probably have lying around, it doesn't need to be new or fancy or the latest model. You just need an iron and an ironing board. And so again, a lot of us have those at home. And last but not least, we have our sewing machines. And again, I'm gonna say it one more time, we're doing this on a budget. Everything that I have, everything that I showed you has been handed down to me, outside of like the paper and the iron. I bought the iron, shouldn't have bought the iron. Let's see, I think, yeah, everything else was handed down to me, and that includes the sewing machines. And does not need to be fancy, does not need to be the newest models. You just need to make sure that it stitches well, it does what it's supposed to do, and it gives you the stitches that you need, whether it's the straight stitch, the zigzag, the buttonhole, you know, whatever you need it to be used for. And I will say, I don't really use this machine, but the machine that I do use, that's a little, you know, beat up looking, it still, again, sews very well. And only thing I really needed to do is, you know, to sew the straight stitch. I do a triple stitch sometimes, and the zigzag stitch, and the buttonhole, which it is kind of messed up, so the buttonhole doesn't work sometimes, but I can still do the buttonhole. I just have to like manually hand crank it. Point being, it doesn't need to be the newest machine. You just need to make sure that the stitch does come out well and it's not messed up or anything like that. And this is the last machine thing that we would need. And I will say again, it's necessary depending on what you're trying to do. If you're just starting off and you're just making clothes for yourself, you may not need it. You can definitely get away with doing like a zigzag stitch, but if you are planning on selling like immediately, you will absolutely need a serger or overlock machine. And what this does is just creates a really nice finished edge on the inside of your garments, so you don't have the raw edge hanging out and the raw, you know, the fraying and everything of the certain materials. This eliminates that. And again, it just depends on what you're getting into right away. If you're making it for yourself, like I said, you might not need it and the zigzag stitch might suffice. But if you are making things for other people, I would definitely suggest getting one of these. And again, I was lucky enough that this was also handed down to me. But, you know, again, definitely make sure that you are asking your, you know, grandparents, your aunts, your uncles, just whoever. I guess I would have to say like an older person that would have, you know, these machines and these tools probably lying around in the attic, in the basement, in the garage, just somewhere. Because if you think about it, back in the day, you know, a lot of our grandmothers, grandparents, and everything like that, they had to sew out of necessity, right? And so a lot of them have these, probably very old sewing machines, probably very, very old sewing machines. But I will also say that not the older, but I learned a long time ago that the heavier the machine, the better. And I really find that to be true because I was working with a 50 plus year old Bernina when I first started, and it worked very well until it didn't. So I say that to say, definitely ask around before you go buying anything, to see if anybody in your family or maybe a friend of yours, your grandmother, somebody has a sewing machine and the tools that I mentioned in this video before you go out to buy. And if you are planning on buying, definitely search your thrift stores and things like that, because what I've also found is with a lot of this stuff, people don't really see the value in it, and they're really just trying to get it off their hands. And so you might come up on a really good machine for a really good price. Okay, everybody, I think that is it. If there's anything that I'm missing, maybe I will just I probably won't do a new video, but I will definitely just include it into the newer videos that I'm making. So if I'm making a sweater, I'll say, I'll give you all of the things that I'm using in that video for that garment, and so you won't be missing out on anything. But I believe this is mainly everything that I use, from the pattern making process to the sewing, and yeah, that's really all. So definitely, again, like I said, ask around, see who has what, figure out what you got, and then go out and get the rest of what you need. And again, it does not need to be the latest, the highest price model. You just need to make sure that the things still work and it still serves the purpose that you need them to serve. So until next time, thank you for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment. Let me know if I said something wrong or messed up or something. Definitely want you guys to comment and do all those things. Until next time, peace.